Okay, the Board of Education meeting will now come to order at 6:30 p.m. Secretary, please call the roll.
Fingerhut,
Here.
Rose, here, Carl,
Here.
Hitzke, here, Darren, absent. Pelletier, here, Aguirre.
Here. Okay. Do we have anyone present this evening who wishes to address the board? None. Do we have anybody online? Moving on to Board of Education comments. I will just briefly say that NG and the middle school are having their holiday, I don't know what they call it, collage winter concert tomorrow night at the high school. It's 5th through 8th, and it's all of them, and they just go right down the line and go back, and it's a lot of fun. So if anyone wants to come and watch, it's tomorrow night. I think it's, I don't remember now if it's 6 or 7. I think it's 7, and they have to be there at 6. So everyone's welcome. But moving on to the code of conduct.
I forgot my book today, so I can read the code, but I can't give the author's little
That's okay.
follow-up. All right, I was really disappointed in myself.
Oh.
Do you have the book? Yeah. Oh, great. I'm not sure what page it's on, but
I take this
with me everywhere I go.
Wow.
I usually do too. I just got a different bag with me today.
You know what would be actually awesome? It was the code about being prepared for me.
So like, we're skipping that one.
I
We're
know,
going
I
back.
was way go.
Oh, my God.
All right. Code number 5 says, I will abide by majority decisions of the board while retaining the right to seek changes in such decisions through ethical and constructive channels. The author goes on to say, thus, if the majority of the board votes opposite the way you vote, you have an obligation to support the board and the superintendent. You do retain the right to keep your opinions and share them during legal and appropriate situations, but never to undermine the board decision, other school board members, or the administration. Thank you, Ray.
Good save. Moving on to the District 75 reports. We'll now hear the report of technology.
Good evening. My name is Daniel Crow. I'm the Chief Information Officer for District 75 and for District 120. Recognizing that that our technology department supports both districts, I have focused this presentation mainly on the updates that pertain to District 75. However, I will mention a few times where the districts intersect with each other for the benefit of both districts. In my past presentations, I've talked about security and how important it is to maintain a high level of data security in this day and age. And I don't believe any staff member in our district doesn't use technology in one way or another. So with technology being so heavily intertwined with today's curriculum, it's important now more than ever to have a safe, working, reliable network to ensure that all of our classroom devices, staff devices, and the thousands of student devices work so instruction can take place. If we're being attacked or had a virus on a network or something, this would all become unusable and instruction would stop. Another area of our focus has been physical security, and this is where we focus on the safety of our staff and students through things like video surveillance cameras and our new alert system, which I'll be demonstrating shortly. We also strive to improve our technology with today's innovations in hopes that future-proofing whenever possible. By refreshing old technology and making sure we are in supported hardware and software means that we can better support our current instructional technology as well as position ourselves for any future technology. We are constantly performing upgrades, rolling out security updates and patches, updating hardware, etc. And we pride ourselves on our ability to do all of this, implement all these technologies using virtualization and redundant systems, working outside normal school hours, so we do not affect instructional time. Next slide, please. Moving systems to the cloud is one of the best ways to protect data and offers redundancy. We have completed moving our Active Directory to cloud-based Microsoft Azure. This has allowed us to be able to implement Microsoft Advanced Threat Protections. These more advanced threat protections are things like next generation antivirus that uses AI to detect viruses and malware. And endpoint detection response. And for those of you that are not aware of what that is, an endpoint is like a staff device. And this advanced threat protection will monitor those staff devices 24 hours a day. And if it does detect a threat, mitigations are automatically activated. We have gotten alerts where someone from another country is trying to sign in as one of our staff members, and EDR immediately blocks them. It automatically implements protections like freezing the account until we are able to verify that the threat's gone. We have also implemented two-factor authentication, and that's like where you send a text or something to your phone to verify it's you before you sign into your account. And adding these protections also help us align with our cyber insurance compliance obligations. Next slide, please. We have implemented the ability for District 75, I mentioned this before, that we've implemented the ability for District 75 students to keep their Google accounts when they move from middle school to the high school. This allows them to keep their academic history and makes a more seamless transition to high school. And having the one account also minimizes security risks. Our insurance provider offers us some pretty cool benefits when it comes to cybersecurity, one of which is working with their security vendor to create what's called a phishing campaign. And that's where they will send out a phishing email, and then we would see how many of our staff click on it. And then we can build awareness training around that and work on providing this type of training throughout the school year. We are also currently looking at replacing our firewall with the next generation firewall that also includes AI for better protection, better performance, and redundancy. Next slide, please. We have completed replacing all of our old video surveillance cameras and adding more of them at all schools with new 4K cloud-based cameras. This is the same system that Mundelein High School has started implementing. And I mention this because in case of emergency, it gives the Mundelein Police Department a single website, a single place to go to view all the cameras in all 5 schools. Next slide, please. We have also replaced the old key fob system at every school with a new cloud-based system that can be administered from anywhere. And we hope to move to a new cloud-based phone system within the next couple of years. Next slide. This past year has been a very busy summer for us, as we had installed new phone handsets in every classroom at every school at District 75. We have also completed the installation of IP speakers and clocks in every classroom and hallway at every school. Next slide. By installing these phones, IP speakers, and upgrading the software that controls them to a new cloud-based software called Fusion, we're able to implement a new alert system called Fusion Alert. And I'd like to show you how it works. Next slide, please. So if you are an administrator and has rights to the system and is given the ability to create an alert, you would install the app on your phone. And from your phone, you can select any of the emergency alerts that you want to deploy. And when you click on the alert, and then you click on submit, it'll send it to every IP speaker and clock and phone handset in the school district. This is the demonstration of what it's like to send the alert and the hallway clocks, and then it'll show you a classroom clock. So these will, it'll announce the alert twice. It'll send the scrolling message nonstop and the flashing lights nonstop until an all clear is sent. When the all clear is sent, they'll alert the message, send the LED, stop the flashing lights, and everything will go back to normal. This is also the same system that Mundelein High School has implemented. So if there were a case such as like if we needed to put a lockdown at, for example, Mundelein High School and Carl Sandburg, you could do it in one instance from anywhere. Also, next slide, please. When you do,
Sorry, you want me to continue?
yes, next slide. Also, when you send out the alerts, not only will you get a text message to anybody that's in the group, a notification from the app pushed to your phone, and also an email to let you know that this alert has been triggered. Next slide, please. Okay, as I mentioned at the beginning, it's important to keep the network working efficiently with supported hardware. So we had upgraded all 4 schools from a gigabit internet connection to 4 gigabit internet connections, and are looking at upgrading existing fiber cabling in schools, network switches, and wireless access points with new ones that contain newer technological advancements and provide more coverage and better speeds. Next slide, please. As we do every year, we have refreshed incoming 4th grade Chromebooks and are finalizing the staff laptop refresh. And I believe we're around 75% completed with that and should have it done by the end of the year. You may have also heard that when Microsoft has announced its end of support for Windows 10. So we are putting together a plan to migrate all of our Windows devices to Windows 11 by the end of next year. Next slide, please. We have added some digital signage at Mechanics Grove and Washington schools and are working with principals to determine if there are more areas where digital signage would make sense. And we're in the preliminary phase of replacing our aging interactive whiteboard technology. And we're looking at moving to the new Promethean interactive displays. So most vendors are moving away from the traditional projector, board, speakers combination with new interactive panels. You can kind of picture like a big 75-inch iPad with touch screens. And then some of them can go on carts and wheel around. And we have determined this device based on input from the Curriculum Council, the Administration and Technology, and we're looking at bringing in 4 of them over winter break. We're deploying in after the new year and building professional development around these. And then lastly, we have been working with teaching and learning on keeping AI on our radar and looking at how it may be included in our curriculum safely and ethically. That's all I got. Any questions?
You had mentioned earlier in the beginning about other countries trying to log into our system.
Yep.
How often?
How often does that happen? I would probably say about once every other month. We see it happening right now. And for staff, we see it happening for students a little more often, but those accounts don't really have access to anything except for the student emails.
The 4 Prometheum updated boards that you're
Yep.
bringing in, where are those gonna be?
Carl Sandburg, Mechanics Grove and Washington schools right now. And they're gonna be, members of the curriculum committee would be working with them, learning going through the professional development, helping to become mentors as if we deploy more, as we deploy more.
So those are on carts, 75 inch?
They're on stands.
Okay.
Some of them are stands that don't go up and down. Some of them are stands that do adjust. And they literally with like 2 fingers can just move the thing up or down. It's really cool because if you put it really low, then the first and second graders can go up there and touch and interact as well.
It sounds really cool. I remember when the smart boards came out, it was a game changer, so it sounds
Yeah.
really interesting too.
Yeah, these new interactive panels, they come with the newer, so at the high school, they use Smart Notebook. At District 75, they use Active Inspire. And the new interactive panels come with brand new, refreshed Active Inspire. It's called Explore something. But we sat through the demo in here with the Curriculum Council and some administration. And Anthony Cassie is here. It's pretty cool. Everything that I could do. The teachers can just instantly mirror their laptops to the screen. They can freeze the screen. They can show a video and freeze it and start annotating it and writing over it. And there's a lot of tools for student engagement to try to, you know, keep them focused and to keep their attention. They're really cool.
Thank you.
Sure.
Come a long way, Dan.
Thank you.
Okay, well, next we'll hear the report of the business office.
So tonight, I really only have a couple items for you. You've seen them all on the consent agenda, or most of them on the consent agenda, including the bill list, the financial report. And actually, we received a FOIA on the item that is our action item this evening regarding the bid for the Carl Sandburg Middle School addition. So on the action items this evening is a request for approval of the base bid for Carl Sandburg totaling $6,985,985, along with a number of alternates, bringing that total to just over $7 million. Happy to answer any questions on that should you have them.
How were the alternates chosen? Because I see that there were a number of options.
We had a target number to get to with that first run through of $7 million. And what we did was we really looked at what made the most sense long and short term, as far as what we could add in that would have a long-term impact. So as an example, we know that the enclosed vestibule, that the things we were keeping in mind is 10 years from now, is someone going to look back and say, why the heck didn't they do this? It was right there, it was an option. And so the two that we really selected that we thought were of primary importance, that were gonna come back and start to impact us almost immediately, were the enclosed vestibule and actually the storage underneath the stage for chairs, because the only other option for that would then be in the storage closet, which we know they would then be competing with soccer balls and all of the other equipment. And we didn't want those two things. So based on the price points, some of the other refinements, that was the logic behind the ones that we chose. And then you can see we were super close to the budget and our target. Great question. All right, we're really excited. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now hear the report of teaching and learning.
Hi, everyone.
Alright.
So Georgie and I are going to do this together. I'm hoping that you did your homework and you read or at least perused the article that we're going to look at today. I think Anna is organized as she is, has a hard copy for you in your folder, so if you want to pull that out. And then we also have pens and highlighters if you need a writing utensil or you want a highlighter. So just to kind of set this up, Georgie and I have worked together on equity related work for 8 years.
Yeah.
At least, yeah. So we started this work at 120. Georgie was a big part of the training and the district equity leadership team. And we actually had an opportunity to co-for that. So this is very natural for me. It is also for Georgie, but I definitely had to, like, hey, this is really good for us to do this together. And so Georgie has a wealth of lived experiences and knowledge around all the different aspects of equity work that we have done. And so jumping into our focus for today, there's a lot in this article, and this is the first time that we've done this. And we would just like to thank Kevin for giving us an opportunity to facilitate a discussion, because it was really, really important. And I think coming from the board, having the board talk about, what can be very challenging ideas and concepts really shows the commitment that this district has to making sure that we have more inclusive practices, access, equity for all of our students. So this is pretty dense. We're going to focus on just 4 areas. And we selected these areas because they best align with the work that we're doing in D75, best can kind of connect to some of the experiences that you've had in the district. So I've set it up and now I'm going to turn over to Georgie to take us through our first activity.
So one thing I want to say is doing all of this equity work, right? We're not going to get to an answer today, and that's totally okay. That's probably the biggest thing that I learned when we first started all of this, and that's super uncomfortable. Eric can attest to it, right? Because he's at 120. We did this and we wanted answers like right now. So just know you're not going to have the answer today, but we're starting on that journey. So I'm going to encourage you to really think reflectively. Okay, draw connections between things that have happened and this article. That's probably the biggest takeaway to get at it quickly. So here we go. In our pairs, right? We decided to pair you up and give you the particular topic. So if Eric and Christy, would you guys mind doing the pacing for privilege? You guys would work together on that. Al and Emily, prioritization principle. And Ray, I'm going to work with you on the deficit ideology piece. We got lots of things to talk about, and then we'll come back right, and do a piece together. So we'll have about, what do we say, 4 minutes to kind of discuss before we move on to the next one. So it's going to go by fast.
Yes, so we are going to try, just due to time limits, we're going to try to stay within around 20 minutes. But if we're having a great time, we may just need to go longer and that's okay also. Yeah, so you, after we're kind of done with the 4 or 5 minutes, then be prepared to share out a little bit on your particular topic.
So what are, just summarizing what that is?
Yeah,
based on-
summarizing, right, and then any kind of personal examples or district examples, it'll just help us dig in a little bit more deeply.
Okay.
My big takeaway
No,
from
you're fine.
pacing privilege section. This idea of competence versus action. This whole passage or this section one here was about being too slow. Focusing work around the people who are engaged in it versus working with the people who are engaged in it with action. So it was almost saying like we were spending, or districts may spend too much time just trying to build their competence.
Getting them comfortable with their own.
Right, versus
Doing the work.
taking action. We know from reading the article that you're never gonna find a place where everybody's comfortable and ready to pursue this. And can't waste time waiting for the reluctant people to hop on board. I think also.
I liked the, I wrote down, I didn't have a hard copy, so I was just looking at it and I took my notes. But I liked the quote where it said, we can't meet people where they are.
This was really,
Right, where they are is probably racial bias and privilege, so that, you know, that seems to be sort of like, you can't dumb it down to the lowest common denominator, like we need to raise them up to where we're at in the work we want to do, kind of like get on board, you know? I thought that made sense. I will say that in running through it, one of my questions that I wrote down was, what are examples? Because I understood what they were saying in the introduction and stuff. It said, you know, like in the beginning, like model and punishes.
That's the unfortunate part.
Like where it said,
There's stereotypes.
it speaks to the situation described earlier where the, equity approach coddles the heads of the people with the least racial inequity investment while punishing the people with the most. My initial question was like, what does that mean? Give me examples of that, because like, I understand the concept of what you're saying, but like in a school setting, especially because I'm not a teacher, like tell me what that looks like. So it did, you know, I did appreciate that they went on and said, like, but I had a question mark next to, like, where it said, grits. I can't read my own handwriting, hold on. Okay. Grit initiators.
And all the, and that's not really true anymore.
Right.
prejudice is racist.
In the mindset of, I mean, it does, in going through the rest of the article, it explains a little bit more, but the first one, I was a little confused with everything. But I think it made sense.
One of the things that jumped out to me too, when they were starting talking about, economic reluctant educators, is that we don't necessarily know how prevalent it is in the district, because we don't have that, we don't necessarily experience or knowledge, we get it secondhand here, so.
We as board members,
As board members, right? So I'm not even aware of what the cultures around racial equity in our buildings, because we're not there, we know what we're doing, but we're hoping this.
No, I don't. Absolutely. That's exactly, and we know, like, when we do the policy, like, we do the equity policy, but we don't know exactly how that's being, like, structured and implemented
Yeah.
throughout the buildings by the staff, by the administrators, beyond that.
One of the questions I asked when reading that was just, are equity reluctant educators prevalent?
Do we have any? Yeah.
And then, so I've actually read this article a couple times, it's like staff member, actually did this 4 years ago.
Something, I don't think it was this particular article, but I know we read an article.
I was reading it from like, staff.
Yes. One of the other things I wanted to talk about
Where
is
the
this,
governance.
like, grandchildren and stuff.
I like that,
Buzzer and governance.
Yeah,
And
that's my morning alarm.
this jumped out, right, and that kept on coming up in here. And that's kind of.
Start to finish up your final
Part of
thought.
my question with that was that, like, I understand we create policies and we know we wrote an equity policy, but did we write an equity, did one of these detours? I don't know. You know, that's the question. It's like, I don't really,
Because maybe,
Well, that was one of the questions too that I had then afterwards is.
like, were we just patting ourselves on the, oh, we did a policy, yay, you know, we're talking about it today, yeah, but that doesn't mean we're implementing it throughout the building.
Yeah, are we monitoring and measuring? Doing what they're intended to do in the.
Okay, so finish up your final statement.
Because nobody.
Kids just.
Okay, we're gonna come back together.
Everywhere.
Good conversation.
I didn't think they were allowed.
For example. You want to share that out?
You're gonna
So-
share that out?
When Georgie and I do workshops together, we always try to replicate for teachers the kinds of strategies that we would want our staff to do with our students. And so we are doing that today. So we're going to give you a minute. Post-it note, this is a free write just for you. And so if you could take your Post-it, everyone will be asked to speak about something that came up in your pair or just something else from the article that resonated with you. So we want to give you a minute, and we do have markers and pens going around. What insights did you have from your conversation today? What questions came up? You know, what did maybe you agree with or disagree with? Just write down something that you wouldn't mind sharing with the group. What's your final thought? So we're going to spend about 10 minutes on this part. Before we launch into a discussion, I realize this is the first time that everyone has done this. And so it may feel a little bit awkward and uncomfortable. I know I'm feeling maybe a little awkward and uncomfortable.
We talk about this all the time.
We do.
Like, honestly,
We do.
these are like our conversations. This is how we begin work, and then
Yes.
we end with these conversations.
And I asked her today, I'm like, okay, what should I not say? And she's like, you can say anything, Stacey. I'm like, okay, great. So one of the things that we always start our workshops saying is there's no blame, shame, or guilt in this room today. So what that means is we are not perfect human beings, and we're doing some amazing work in District 75. But it doesn't mean that we can't get better. And when we bring up things that maybe could be changed or things that you're going to share, again, there's no blame, shame, or guilt in that, because we have to identify the problems before we can figure out how to fix them. Okay. So do we want to start with the two of you, pacing for privilege? What came up in your conversation?
Sure.
Start with I had taken notes from the digital, so I didn't have the hard copy initially, but I wrote, one of the quotes that I liked that said, we can't meet people where they are when where they are is fraught with racial bias and privilege. That, essentially we can't just wait for the lowest common denominator basically to get comfortable with it for us to start doing the work. We have to just start doing the work and expect them to rise to where we want them to be. That's the whole point with this particular pacing detour.
And just to piggyback off of that, we talked a little bit about this idea of competence versus action. And my little note that I wrote said, equity action shouldn't be delayed by trying to build competence in equity reluctant educators. And there's a really nice quote here at the end of that section that says, equity is neither optional nor negotiable. So if that's something that our district is committed to, it needs to be prevalent in every part of the district. There was even mention in here where they said those outliers, those equity reluctant educators should almost feel like they don't fit into that district because that's what the district values, and it should be everywhere. We can't wait for them to come around before we take action.
Can I read that quote one more time? Because I only highlighted in blue a couple of things, and this was a blue quote.
Yeah.
So we start where we need to be. Equity is neither optional nor negotiable. This is who we are as a school. These are the values which we will be held accountable. And that's at the end of the pacing for privilege. I thought that quote was very, very powerful.
So as a comment, one of the things we talked about was how the difference between him being an educator also and me being not an educator and just on the board. I don't know exactly what's going on and how, like when we created an equity policy, we did that. I don't know, did we create a policy that created one of these detours that we pat ourselves on the back because we created a policy, yay, but how do we know it's being implemented? Because that's one of those things that's board work is up in the balcony, not, down on the dance floor. And so that's just one of those things that's something for us to learn more about and look into, but we can't answer that today.
Of course.
I love that, because as I was reading this, I kept thinking about all the groups of students who have come in to showcase their work. And are we seeing a thread of where, every type of learner, right? And they're being showcased everywhere. So I love that we're starting to look at that. We don't necessarily have to go into the buildings. They're coming to us and we can start these questions in advance.
One of the things early on for the pacing for privilege is that I thought was the hardest of all the work we did, because some people were like, no, it is the time, we cannot wait, we owe it to our students, particularly our students of color. And then other people were kind of like, wait, but if we make everyone mad, no one's going to open the door so we can be invited in to have these conversations. And so I think it is a little bit of a dance.
Yeah.
And you have to balance it. But one of the things that we were really blessed with at 120 is that we had a core group of educators who really committed to this work. And then it built and built and built until you had a coalition of the willing.
Yeah. Can I add just enough? And we didn't quite get to this point, but I said that I wanted to kind of bring it up. What I appreciate too is that, because all of this is about not just wanting to basically talk the talk, we need to walk the walk too. Like, that's the sum and
Yeah.
substance of all of this. I appreciate that at our district, I think that we, and again, this is, I'm recognizing this is coming from a personal lens and not, applying to everybody, but we have prioritized where at some points other districts have not, giving off at least one of the Jewish holidays. It's not all of them, it's one, it's
Right.
making it clear that this is something that we value, and it's
Right.
showing our small population of Jewish
Right.
students, though, that we don't want you to have to miss 3 days of school,
Right,
at least we're gonna
exactly.
limit how many you do.
Right.
What I appreciate, and I personally have felt that some of the other districts have not felt that, even though
Sure.
they have a policy, they're doing things, but haven't done it.
Right.
But I have appreciated that has changed
Right,
this year,
Right.
in this last year, where others just have implemented
Right.
that and given
Right.
a day off for that, because while there might be rules that say they're not supposed to schedule tests and whatever, it happens and they
Right.
still do it, and
right,
just having, it shows that there's an effort being made, that even
Yeah.
if it's not perfect and it's not there,
right,
we're recognizing that we're not just talking the talk and saying, well, as long as it doesn't apply to everybody, we're
right,
fair,
Right.
we're good.
And I think it's important a message it also sends to students who are not Jewish also, is that this is, we value other religions and want to validate and want to honor and recognize. And so I also think that's an important part of the message.
So I just wanted to point that out, but our district has done it
Yeah,
a little bit
that's
longer,
great.
but I do appreciate the efforts being made
Yes.
to try to kind of align and do that, and
Sure.
it's recognized by.
I appreciate that example of the impact on the other students too. I had thought of that, but that's like another
Because
way
we
to
do have
demonstrate.
students who participate, right,
Yeah.
in fasting for longer
Yeah.
periods of time. That we can't, give all 30 days off, but knowing that they are going to be viewed as well, right? That goes a long way to having those relationships with their teachers.
They don't feel left out.
They're seen.
And one of the things, so there were some questions, so you have the D75 Google Doc where you put questions in. So there's some questions about how we're teaching about world religions in the curriculum. And so some of the things that, with the younger students, teachers approach it a little bit differently, but the diversity of books in the classroom libraries, and in the library itself, that references and teaches about the world religions in a developmentally appropriate way. Also, at Sandberg, they have a whole project their first year on world religions. And then I know the religions are also looked at in United States history in terms of how they come up in different ways that the United States has expanded and collaborated with other countries who have different religions. So,
And to a degree of world studies too.
yes, for sure, for sure.
And I think I might have seen it at the cultural fair, right? At the high school, they call it Common Ground, and I know it's there for sure. But at the cultural fair at D75, it got me thinking, like, can we expand a little bit
Yeah.
more
Right.
to do that as well?
Okay, so the two of you had prioritization principle.
Yeah, so what we really focused on was that the quote that says every policy decision needs to be filtered through an equity lens. How will it impact and improve conditions for students and families of color? So we said, we feel like as a board, we sometimes we talk about the equity policy a lot, but I feel like that question is really important to be asking as we continue forward.
And the note I made was, the students of color often are perceived not to be as smart or intelligent as others. And that's not true, You don't have to have a certain color
Right.
to be not intelligent or exceptionally intelligent. And also, I think that we don't include Asian people, Asian students in that, because it seems like globally they are perceived to be exceptionally intelligent because of their way Asian countries teach, but it's not also entirely true either.
And Excuse me. So to your point, one of the things that comes up in here is this idea of tracking. And so you have the upper level classes and the lower level classes. And what we have found, and this was the big push for our honors. So what we found is at the high school, and we saw it in Sandburg with the leveling, is that the majority of students in those upper level classes were white and Asian, and the brown and black students were in the lower level classes. And that there's so many factors that go into that, and some of it is implicit bias. There's so many other things, and it's way too long of a conversation to have right now. But what we have found is when we detract and we put kids together, it's amazing that students who were often placed in a lower level are doing very well. And they're working with students who have different lived experiences whom they would never maybe interact with in other situations.
So I guess my question would be, do they get put in the lower track because of their color? And without knowing whether they could survive or be successful in the upper track? It's a loaded question. It's a loaded question, I understand that.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So this is what,
I mean, like, there's so many.
I don't wanna
factors
put
that
you
go
on-
into that start even
Yeah,
years
if
before they get.
an uncomfortable thing to.
But that's,
I mean,
regardless of why they did that, that's part of the reason why they're now not doing the tracks, because then they don't have to necessarily address the why, they're addressing the, let's figure out how to fix the problem rather than analyzing.
But it's also
why
something
it
that has
became
to
that.
continue, because if it
Yeah.
falls back again, then.
But with the earned honors, they can earn those honors that then earn them the ability to then put themselves
Yes.
into the
Yes.
next honors,
Yes.
AP, whatever, because those earned
Right.
honors are only that like first year or two.
right, right,
Um,
just the first year.
and then,
And
then they can self-place rather than needing to,
Right. And so what we also saw, so at Sandburg, so our honors is now, well, we're calling it honors recognition because they don't get honors credit, but it's sixth, seventh and eighth grade. So our eighth graders now have that opportunity, and all the students are together. And what is interesting is in the dual language program, there actually wasn't an honors level class. So the kids were put together, and they had to be because there weren't enough like teachers to have a small section of dual language students who were at that honors, considered the honors level. And so it's amazing that all the kids were doing well and figuring it out, and they were all together. And so when we went with this, like, hey, we're gonna do track at Sandburg, the dual teachers were like, great, now my kids can be recognized with that honors. And there's a lot of obviously Latino students in our dual program, and it was a blind spot, because we had this tracked in the monolingual classrooms, but we did not have that in dual, and dual students were not able to have that honors recognition.
I just like to throw you the hard question.
Yeah, thanks. I also could talk about parents, and when we're placing students who calls us and says, hey, I want my kid in the higher level class, and the parents who don't call us and just kind of trust that the school is placing their child in the right class. And so those are really big pieces that I probably shouldn't be talking about right now, open sessions. We're gonna shift to, because we're a little bit over time. So what, Ray and Georgie, what did you talk about?
Ray, share what you and I talked about, because I
can you
didn't
refresh
even.
what's the topic? So that.
Oh, thank you.
Yes. the topic is-
Deficit ideology.
Yep.
Thank you.
Deficit ideology.
Yep,
That's ours.
Oh, I studied the wrong one.
we could talk about a different one. Whatever you
No,
want
no,
to share, whatever you want to share.
George and I first, got into the discussion we were talking about, and I was kind of sharing with her what it was like when I first started here, in the police department. And racism was running rampant throughout the community. And taking it full circle, when you look at where, Wonderland is a hardcore blue collar community. And all of the issues were very clear in terms of racism, and it affected the community, it affected school. and it affected the family. So those are the three most important parts of the whole community. If those three aren't on board, they're not working together, it's not gonna work.
Right.
And that's what we are talking about. That part of the change has to come from trying to repair the systems,
Yeah.
you know, consistency with community, family, and, school systems. Because then there's a consistent message across the board that here's where we should be, here's what we'll accept, here's what's tolerable. So rather than trying to get the system and force it to fix, the focus needs to be on the students. And getting them on board with what these changes are and how it affects everything.
Yes.
And I would just want to read this one thing that was really. We can resolve racial inequities by simply teaching students of color to have grit. It's like assuming we can resolve climate change by teaching coastal communities to swim faster. And absurd as that is, that's what we're facing every day. But the real message, the real point. What do trauma-informed practices look like for students? And here's the key thing. Whose primary source of trauma is the racism they experience at school. And expand that to. Blush, God, you scared me. I thought I was shot. So the trauma, I mean, that's a really heavy duty word, phrase, because we don't think about what are these kids being exposed to.
Right.
And then take that up another notch, because when they go home and they're in the family, the whole family unit now is becoming traumatized because of what's happening in the school environment. But let's expand it to the community environment. And especially with the schools, because that's where they are, each day. So, I mean, this was really, when you put it in a perspective of how people, and I mean, even some of that, if you extrapolate out to what's going on with, these school shootings and,
Yeah,
you know,
right.
there's a trauma element involved in what's happening in our society right now.
We're talking about the littles. We're not even talking about high school kids.
Yeah.
We're talking
Right.
about 8, 9, 10, 11, 12-year-old kids. Like, that's heartbreaking to know that they're being exposed to this kind of trauma, right, at school through the racist things that are happening. And yeah, we gotta get there.
You know, I was talking to a former student today, so he is back from Stanford. So he actually was in a Nigerian boarding school before coming to 75. So he was in middle school, and then he was at 120, and now he's pursuing his environmental engineering degree at Stanford. And we were talking just a little bit about his experiences at Mundelein. And he said that, to your point, he said when he came in to Mundelein, some of the Black kids asked him which side he hangs on or something. And he was like, I didn't know what that meant. And I came to learn that it was like about gangs. And they just assumed because I was Black, I was in a gang. And then we talked a little bit about just what it means to navigate white spaces as a Black student, because he was in lots of honors and AP courses. And he said, you just learn to figure it out. You learn to kind of follow those norms. And he said that he was called things like Oreo a lot, because he said, I wasn't Black enough for Black students and I wasn't white enough for the white students. And that's an example of trauma, like that goes home with them, and that affects every, you know, going to school, being a kid is hard enough.
Right.
It is hard enough.
And you can't like show that rage, right, when those things happen. So along those lines, there's so many little instances that as a brown kid in school where all of my peers were white, you can't get mad because it's just a joke. Why are you taking it like that? We're just kidding. But what if like it happens so much and there's so many kidding jokes?
Right.
how does the child stay engaged? Why would you stay engaged in school?
So one of the things I wanted to note too, we've talked a lot about the students and then, or you talked a lot about community and families as well. One of the things that we've also focused on, and kudos to Georgie, is our staff of color. And so 80% or more of our school staff is white. Our teachers, I think it's nearly 90%. And so finding spaces for staff of color to come together is really important. I don't know if you want to make a comment about that.
Yeah, so I started with the affinity group 3 years ago, being led by another educator, it just gave me the space to sort of not have to explain why I feel a certain way when a colleague says, oh, we're having a PD again about this. And it's like, guess what? That's my life all the time. Like, I can't check out. I can't pretend it's not here with me, right? And so that gave me a space to kind of, as an adult, you get tired of just kind of dealing with that. Very similarly to what the student said, you know, it just grinds on you and you just need that space with other people that can just understand. There's no answer to it. There's no fix, but it's just nice to have that space to kind of let it come out.
So something we could potentially look at bringing to District
I would
75.
love to. That would be so awesome.
Do you want to wrap us up with
Yes.
final activity?
Okay, final activity. So we have note cards here for you guys. Woo, I feel like that away. Yeah, what we're gonna ask is just one word. You know, think about everything that we have said, right? One word that relates to your feelings. How do you feel about this? And if you would like to share, great. If not, though, I am gonna collect it because I've been brewing in my brain. I want to do a podcast, guys. And I think I talked to Kevin last year after we went to that big conference and I saw another board sort of do this.
Oh,
Yeah, and a lot of the strategies that I was kind of looking at, like, what do we do now? One of them was about clear communication and having stakeholders and hearing, right? The community needs to hear what we're doing. And one of those ways is through a podcast. And I was like, that would be so cool.
we could be sung together on a podcast.
Yes, we would. So, yeah, one word, I know. So how we're feeling after this.
After this conversation.
Okay, yeah.
What's one word that would describe us where you're at?
Yeah, Al is ready.
You know, I run into that at the ballpark a lot when we're trying to discipline people or people get in trouble, and it's, well, you're picking on me because I'm black, or you're picking on me because I'm Hispanic. No, I'm picking on you because you broke the rule. I say, I'm colorblind. I don't care whether you're black, pink, purple, or orange. Rules, that's why you're being singled out. Doesn't always work very well.
I do say to my students something similar. I won't say I'm colorblind because they need to know that I'm seeing them for who they are, right? But the rules
Are the rules.
are the rules, correct? And so it's not you as a person, although you might feel like it is, it's the behavior behind it. So I see you as a brown boy who always gets in trouble, but this is why I'm telling you, this is what was unacceptable. And they get it. They get it.
Sometimes I think it's easier with younger students than a 45-year-old adult.
Yes.
With
Always.
Yes. Yeah, does anybody want to share their word?
Sure,
Yeah.
why not? Go ahead. I wrote unfinished.
I like it.
This was great. I really enjoyed this article. I looked at it from a different lens because I've read it previously as a staff member, and as a staff member, there's tons of different ways to get involved in all the work, all the different committees. But from the governance perspective, you know, what are we doing to address this? Like, we had a great conversation today, a good starting point, but then the alarm went off and time ran out. time can't run out on this. So what are we doing with,
This.
with,
Blame
with today?
Yeah.
We,
I put hopeful because start is there, you know, for so long, going back to the time that Ray's talked about, we did nothing. I mean, and it's got to start here at the, in the schools so that it can be taken back to the families and maybe to the siblings that did not get the chance to experience having this, you know. Hopeful because we need to do something. We needed to have it done. So,
Talk about the healing that you would, right, that we are gonna create within those families.
Yeah.
Exactly what you said, the older siblings that didn't have the equity lens for them. Yeah. Who else wants to share?
But educational. Because I think across so many lines, it kind of opened your eyes and kind of created an awareness, an educational awareness of where and what we need to know so that we can start to do something about it.
Absolutely.
I think that is so true, not just for Mundelein, but for our country and our world.
Right.
Right, is really listening to one another and understanding and educating ourselves when we don't have all that information.
So it's a good segue. I put open. I want to be open to
Yes,
listening to.
Yeah.
And learning and.
yes, for sure.
Mine was similar, like having the will.
Well, in wrapping up, so, couple of things. So I would like to challenge the board to think about, look for, identify, name the equity detours in District 75. I don't know all of them, we don't know all of them, but we have them. We have them 120, everyone has them. And then number two, take those equity principles because we are doing a lot of those very well. But make sure that they're really baked into or woven into the fabric of this district. So like you said, there's an equity policy, but what does that look like? How is that baked into all the things that we're doing in all the buildings? So I'd like to give you that challenge. And then finally, I think that you talked about making those decisions through an equity lens. So these are some questions that we've used at D120 when we're making big decisions, such as staffing, scheduling, budget, resources. We do, the leadership team in particular does go through these questions. And when we're making the decision, we ask ourselves, who are the groups will be most affected by this policy? Have we involved all the stakeholders? Have we gotten different voices? And so this is a great check to make sure that when you're making that decision, you're looking at it through an equity lens.
I think my final parting words is that it has to be like an allyship, right? We cannot ask our Brown staff to lead this whole thing as they are trying to also navigate the system. Like we really do need to have a partnership in where we are working alongside.
And I appreciate her so much, and I hope y'all know how valuable she is to both our districts. So she's, yeah, we're all very, very lucky to have you. All right, thanks, everyone. Did you have something? Do you want to say one more
I'm
thing?
just still thinking like, so what's next, right? We want to continue this and this was a great time for us to revisit this. But then next month, we have a whole bunch of other things going on, and then the next month will be other things. So what are we doing to continue this work and not find ourselves in a pacing detour?
Well, I think as board members, they've provided you some guiding questions. So as we're presenting, use those questions to be able to say, how is this applying to what we're doing with the equity lens? Georgie had a good example, like when we bring our students in from our buildings, what they're demonstrating to you is what's the product from our school board policy about equity. So it's one of the things that we're asking them to do. So I would say use that as your basis for when you're coming into board meetings and looking at what we're presenting. Make sure you're helping us stay accountable what we said we'd do. Because what you heard Stacy mention at the end of those guiding questions. On an admin level, we're doing that also in 75, so we're thinking that way. So that would be the first thing I would say, just like every day. What we've tried to do is make it where it's our common practice. We're not needing to be special always about saying, here it is, because it's just what we do. So what I'd say is, what would be the next step, Stacy or Georgie, as we talk about advancing professional development wise, that you think we might want to do for our board?
So, that's interesting. There are a couple of things that are coming up. So our joint admin from 75 and 120 are working with a director of equity, a facilitator, January 21st, and we'll be looking at social justice, systemic racism, in schools and education. So we'll be learning together. And then there's an open invitation to staff will be presenting, after school. And so the district is invited. And then we have a former Among the Line alum, who's coming. She's also director of equity in a K-8 district. And she'll be here in February or March, again, training with our joint admin. One of the things that we could look at is, so I have been in contact with ISB. They did that joint training, the equity training we did before, which I thought was a really good introduction or not. So I will say it's been a little bit challenging to connect with them, but there are a lot of other amazing presenters. So Kevin, I kind of defer to you on what that could look like for our board. Or we love doing this, and so we would be happy to facilitate more conversation activities with you all as well. And we're free, kind of. Georgie is.
Kind of, yeah.
All right, anything else? All right,
Thank you.
Thank you. You're awesome. Thank you so much.
Yes, we should all give back our highlighters too. Run it down. Okay. Then moving on to the superintendent's report. Yeah.
So before we begin on my report, what I'd say to address, like prepping for next month already. Next month, it's the mid-year review for our data. So knowing that is we get you that information ahead of time. I would ask that you start looking through that data, use those directing questions in regards to equity and see how those align with what you're seeing in data. And then if you have questions that go beyond that, that's a great opportunity to be able to put that in that document that we have for you to be able to fill out. So if there's something more we can bring, we would want to try to be able to provide that for you at the January meeting. Okay. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we have up for your recommendation for your approval. It's press 117 and 830. So we did ask that you had reviewed some of those before coming back to this meeting. The one with the biggest change or new for us was going to be policy 830, and that was with people being on campus, which we expanded that to also talk about how people conducted themselves online, and specifically talking about emails directly to our staff, where we want to put, where we have more ability as an administrator to address concerns that our community may point towards our staff. Ultimately, final point could be making a recommendation to you as a board that we refrain from that person having direct contact with any of our staff. So we don't have any changes from our last board meeting. Unless Christy or Georgie had something else you wanted to bring up. Otherwise, we would make the request that the board approve both those policies, or the group of policies, and 830 as presented.
I have no comments, Chris.
I think it shows a strong commitment to supporting our teachers and our staff at school. So.
Okay, thank you. Moving on, this is more of a time for you to be able to have your discussions. And Christy, I would just ask you if we could also put in the resolution follow-up when we get to the point. So This next part is a follow-up from the Triple I conference, and what we'd asked is for you to be able to bring back some summaries of panel sessions that you attended, and specifically if there were some ideas that you felt that we could expand potentially as a group from a board sense, or that you'd like us administratively to investigate more. And what we'd like to be able to do is to be able to share that now. Anna did share a Google document so that everybody could share their summaries or links, so everybody would have access to the information you have. If you haven't had a chance to do that yet, I would ask you to do that, so other board members and admin could see, have access to some of those documents if we need to explore further. Okay? Christy, if you don't mind, will you lead us off?
No problem. I also want to say that when Marcella told me she wasn't going to be here today, I asked her to please use that Google Doc and put her stuff on there. So she has done that. So she is the first one on there because I did ask her to do that. I followed up and put my stuff on there. I know that Georgie put a link to her doc, and that's great. I would ask that everybody else after tonight do the same thing, whether you cut and paste from your own information, type your stuff in that you're sharing or whatever. That way we have it all in one spot. And then Marcella can also read through it since she couldn't be here. Anna had sent it to us Friday with a link to a Google Doc asking to share your information in prep for this, but it doesn't not required that you have done it before today. I'm just asking that you go through and do that after. So I won't read all of Marcella's stuff. Everyone can do that on their own. So I started off with a pre-workshop. I chose to do the trust edge, not realizing that the keynote speaker number 2, this was all based on his book. And so I got a pre-refresher of his entire thing, but it was good. I highlighted some of my keynotes stuff on there. One thing that I thought was interesting to think about was there was essentially his whole thing was the trust edge is a competitive advantage gained when others confidently believe in you and what you say. It's based on 8 pillars of trust. They all start with the C. He says he didn't mean for them to all start with the C. I don't believe that, but that's fine. Clarity, compassion, character, competency, commitment, connection, contribution, and consistency. But one of the ideas that I thought was interesting in going through all of that, I'm not going to teach you everything that I learned, but was something to consider along the lines of what we do with our code of conduct, how we focus on one of those and read that each time. It was saying that we may want to consider starting each of our board meetings by reading our mission statement, just to kind of keep that in mind. So, as we are doing the work of the district and doing the board work, that we're keeping some of that in mind. I don't know if everyone thinks that's hokey or not, but that would be an idea that I thought was a way to kind of bring it back and keep everyone mindful of that. I put some of the quotes and stuff on there. I thought a lot of it was very timely with, being authentic and being able to earn the trust by being consistent, being I don't know how to do it without doing like a whole lecture on the whole thing. But another thing was another idea was to do the idea was basically starting when you seat a new board, like doing a 90-day quick plan, kind of saying like where we are now, where we want to be in 90 days, sharing whys and hows with specificity of how we want to do that, and then sort of checking in every 90 days. Just to that's sort of like doing board governance work, but its recommendation was maybe to do it a little bit more on a mini basis quarterly and keep it rather than waiting until the end of the year and doing that. And the idea was maybe starting to do it when you seat a new board, so they kind of see where we are now, where are we going, and then having that 90-day check-in and then kind of being able to see. And I know from personal experience, when I was a new board member, I know that after about a year, when she saw the kind of consistency of going through, you kind of had a better idea of like, okay, I think I now get what we're doing with the different topics, each meeting and all of that. So I thought that was an interesting idea to kind of put that into practice. The keynote speaker, Mickey Smith, I liked him, the first one. I liked him a lot. I liked the music that played. the music went on a little too long, and I like music, but I felt like that could have been short circuited a little bit, and got the same point across and gotten more stuff. It was nice, but sort of like, okay. But he also talked about that the one thing that I really wrote down about that was vision, intentionality, and consistency. It was and earning that trust. It was a lot of the theme for the weekend. I spent a lot of my time at the delegation, or as the delegate for the resolution committee. Everything that we consistent with the resolution committee was all adopted as presented. So everything that we voted for succeeded, and it was interesting, but not really surprising. I also attended one on school board self-evaluations. They were promoting the IASB self-evaluation workshop for board governance, which we've done on the way. Similarly to what we were talking about with those 90-day reviews, they were recommending doing a quarterly self-evaluation. I know that's one of the things that we've talked about, how in years past, we used to do a little Google form at the end of each meeting, but none of us felt like that was really getting there. And there were a number of different samples. We haven't hit on one. We've been a little busy with other things, but I thought that idea aligned very well with that other one of maybe doing 90-day check-ins and maybe being a little more intentional with it rather than just having a rote task at the end of each meeting and not really getting much out of it. So I thought that sort of aligned. Another idea that I thought was something to think about, that it was saying for community purposes, maybe consider having like the board at D75 or, whatever our email, is, and then have that email address would be on the website for communities, whatever. And if they sent an email, it would automatically then forward to all of us. Not that nobody wouldn't have to respond to each one, but it's a way to have a unifying, if somebody has complaints, comments, concerns, but it was talking about having like a BOE email that forwards to all members for the public and community. And I thought that could be a way to align a little bit more with our community outreach that we've talked about doing, rather than, having people click through a bunch of places to get our email addresses. And then sometimes they cut and paste, or sometimes they only send to one or two of us or whatever. So that maybe, and then it automatically puts it out there for everyone to see whatever any one of us are getting if that comes in. So I thought that was an interesting idea. There was another recommendation to go through and look at a lot of specific handouts. I didn't have a chance to go through and do that because the app has a number of handouts. Even if you didn't attend those particular sessions, you have the benefit of that. So I meant to kind of check into some of that. As a note, and I put them in here, I have not read them yet, but I did personally purchase 2 books that I thought looked interesting from the bookstore that I intend to read, and I can always come back and talk about things later as if I find anything great. One was How Not to Be a Terrible School Board Member. It's obviously being a little bit tongue in cheek, but I thought that would be a good thing to read, and figured it couldn't hurt, and might be something to help new board members if I find something in there, since we at some point, we'll have new ones. The other one was Building Great School Board and Superintendent Teams, which I thought was timely considering we intend to have a new superintendent in the next year. So I thought that was a good book for me to take a look at and at least see if there was anything, so that we can hit the ground running when we get started. So that's my.
You want to go here?
Sure. I'm sorry, I can't find that document, but earlier today I did share my notes with everybody. So if anybody does want to follow along, they should be in your email.
We can cut and paste.
The first one that I went to was called Taking Action, Administrative Red Flags During Construction. And this was really more focused toward administrators, but there were board members presenting as well. And there were some board related questions, but one of the first couple things that stood out to me, there was 2 quotes that they said right away. The first one was, "We're always amazed when projects go well." And even though it doesn't sound very optimistic, they were really just saying, expect a lot of challenges. These are big projects and there's a lot to do. So, it's not always as smooth as you dream it out to be. But they followed that up with saying that oftentimes the most challenging path can lead to the greatest outcome. So stick with it, and, it's going to be okay, but be ready for it. There were questions about the board's responsibilities in construction projects, and first thing that was said by a former board member is that the board is still in the balcony, should be micromanaging. Our responsibilities are to hear recommendations and take action so that the project can progress. They did say some important questions for the board to ask during construction process, and that's tell me more, what are the risks and how much does it cost? And then there was mention of the board establishing a construction facility committee, really just as an option. But more important than the board doing that was the superintendent having, you know, their construction teams and committees. Some of the people on that would be the CSBO, building and grounds, architect, peers, construction attorney. One person that was someone I've never heard about was called an owner's representative, and that was something that they really stressed. I had to do a little digging around to find out more about what an owner's representative is. It said the main difference between an owner's rep and a general contractor is the owner's rep advocates for the owner's interest, while the general contractor executes the construction. They went on to say that the owner's representative is hired to be on your side, a pain in the neck to the architects, and the trusted advisor to the superintendent. They said that's often somebody, it could be somebody third party or somebody within the district already too. Kind of like that trusted advisor, middleman person between all the workers and the school team. Again, they did say to expect problems. They did go on to say that one of the more common problems with construction projects are the mechanical systems after construction. They just said these are very hard things to turn over, and it's not uncommon for there to be challenges with these. So this might be stuff you guys already know, but it was brand new to me. They did mention a whole list of red flags. I won't go through each of them, but they're in my notes and I'll share them with everybody again if you can't find them. One thing that I did just notice, because we saw it early in our presentation today, was to be cautious of an excessive amount of alternatives. Yeah, this is kind of beyond me. I'm just sharing my information. I did notice there was alternatives today, but again, I don't know what that means. It's all looked good to me.
I think those were in the bid process though, and so
Okay.
this we've only accepted
Okay.
or it's being proposed. We haven't voted yet.
Just a quick one. So the scenario was an alternate for the enclosed vestibule.
Yeah.
We put that separate because we knew that'd be an add-on, and it was to make sure if we knew if that would fit within the price range after the bidding was done.
The next one that I went to was called TIF 101, How TIFs Work and Impact Funding. This was really great. I kind of enjoyed it. My most exciting thing about all the different finance ones that I went to was that it wasn't brand new information. Like I kind of thought I was going to go into this and I was going to hear something that was just going to make it all click in place and I'd finally get it all. But the information is consistent. It's what we hear in here. It's what the people are presenting on. I'm getting to a point where I'm understanding it a little bit more and a little bit more. I'm just going to read my little
Notice you're
Take away.
finishing up your first term and that's kind of
Yeah.
where it all gels, right?
So I wrote, I understand the TIFs. I'm just writing this because I'm trying to get to a point where I can explain it to other people. Not just understand it, but be able to explain it. So I wrote, I understand that TIFs are used to generate revenue for municipalities to improve their economic well-being, mostly through the development and redevelopment of specific areas of land or city called districts. The TIFs create a tax base value that is frozen over 23 years. Please correct me if I'm wrong in any of this. This is me trying to figure it out. As development occurs, the EAV and the EAV, the property rises over time. The TIF district then collects the increment above the base value and uses it as revenue for continued development of the TIF district.
Yeah.
Am I doing okay? I'm getting it. When the TIF district ends, then the full tax base and TIF growth, that growth in EAV then becomes fully available to the taxing districts.
Of course, it's wrapped up.
I'm sorry,
in everyone.
most of you guys probably already know this. I'm just,
No.
again, trying to improve my understanding of it.
And unless they extend it.
Yeah,
Unless they
unless
extend
they
it,
roll it
yes.
over.
Okay, the next one I went to was demystifying the tax levy. This was another one where I was like, okay, I know what they're talking about here. So, I don't know that this is all news for you. I have a longer takeaway here. I shared it with everybody. You guys can read it.
I shared the Google Doc with you only
Okay.
because I don't know how to link to your doc like Georgie did, so perhaps what, you guys can figure that out. Otherwise, I would have done it for you, but I didn't know how to do that.
I think the big things that stood out to me though, where they talked about a couple different public acts. Public Act 102-519, that was about, that only applied to tax capped counties only, and then another Public Act 102-0895. They both describe them as mechanisms that could potentially, under certain circumstances, allow boards to or districts to recapture losses if they didn't levy the extended amount. But there was like a lot of different details that went into that in order to be eligible. It didn't sound easy, but so that was that. The last one I went to was expenditures for the novice. This one kind of wasn't what I thought it was going to be. They talked more, it was more of like the accounting piece and how things are coded, which was, I had no idea, very detailed. About those, they're coded in three different sections: fund, function, and object. They went through all of the different funds, all the different functions, all the different objects, and then talked about all the nuances. And that's why we have professionals that do it and not us. So it was just really interesting to hear all that, though. I mean, I knew there was a lot to it, but didn't realize all the different nuances. And there was two different CBSOs up there kind of talking about how they do the same thing, just very, very differently. And, you know, it's both okay. It just depends on kind of your accounting methods. And yeah. Sorry if I went on too long.
I will also link my document into the one that I just saw from Anna. The first one I went to was promoting your district story through marketing. I just want to share a quote from there that I really liked, and it said, "Your district story is its strongest asset, and it's turning the story into a powerful connection with your community. That's most important." So it kind of reminded me of our community outreach and that. The second one I went to was Need to Know, supporting adoptive, foster, and kinship children. It actually tied in very nicely to the presentation we had tonight, except that they talked about how the trauma that they're experiencing, most likely at school, also doesn't necessarily end at home. There's, you know, may or may not be like that safe place. And then finally, building a foundation for school safety. Unfortunately, that tied into what has happened this week. And I feel like a lot of what you may have seen in the news coverage is what was talked about at this conference, but I'll share more details in my notes.
Yeah, I'll share my story too. The first one I went to was about mental health and student alternatives, I guess you could call it, in McHenry County. They have a thing called The Break, where the mission of The Break is to provide adolescents and young adults a safe and stimulating environment for connecting, having fun, and finding acceptance among peers, adults in the community. Their core values are creativity, inspiration, integrity, history, our future, and inclusion. And what they do is after school drop-ins, recreation and prevention activities, resource navigation, recovery, coaching, a connection, and community and trust building. They have at The Break, kids that are out of school suspension can go to this place, and people there will work with them, make sure that they're getting school stuff done, giving them alternatives to getting into trouble. There's a whole gamut. They work together with Ascension Healthcare. So if there are issues that are stronger that need to be addressed, you know, they can tap into the healthcare system and that. Sounds like a good program. I think it also helps with not only kids that are troubled, but LGBTQ issues also. Second one I went to, and Georgie was there too, and I was a little disappointed. It was AI in schools, and the presenter kind of went, here's what's good in this section, here's what's bad in this, that, the bad part of the section. Move on to the next, I think the message I took away from him is that we are going to have to get on board because AI is coming. And not only is it here, but it's going to be coming even further down the line. So maybe Georgia will expand upon that a little more. And then the third was yeah. Team building with the school board. And my team building matters, shared goals, improved communication, and enhanced trust. A lot of different things. They talked about the superintendent's role in team building, which they're considered the facilitator, the visionary, and the champion. And pieces to successful teams are trust versus absence of trust, positive conflict versus fear of conflict, commitment versus lack of commitment, accountability versus avoidance of accountability, and focus on collective results versus inattention to results. There's a number of other slides that went with it. I think they were hoping to have a larger audience because it was a big auditorium. And there was probably, if I'm overestimating, 50 people in this big room. Good presentation, but probably stuff we pretty much already know. So, but I will pass that stuff.
Before you go, can I add one more thing that what you just said sort of reminded me, it's in my thing, another along the lines of like when we seat a new board and doing that on the accountability, there were discussions about, I know we've heard them talked about before, but I don't know that we've really done them this way. And I thought it was interesting for us to do, is for us to really break down and do written board agreements that then they recommended. I mean, as simple as, how do we get things on the agenda? What are we all agreeing that we are and are not going to respond on social media or to questions in the community? Kind of breaking some of that down, which if you've been on here, some of this might be kind of natural things, but especially if you're brand new, and it's a way to have all of us sort of think about how we're going to do that and remind us. I thought that was an interesting idea to think about, and I just meant to follow up on that. It's in my piece, but I forgot to say that. I didn't.
I went to what school board members should know about English learners. And in my notes, I kind of did like the introductions and the challenges that they faced. I ran into Jamie, and we know a lot about this, but just sort of thinking, I know a lot about it like at the high school level, but not necessarily for the elementary, right? So I've had a lot of questions about that. And the big thing that I saw in here that I put down was the language acquisition. No one has died of being bilingual. So like, make sure that your teachers, let's pay them to get their ESL. Like they can do this. Like that is such an easy fix, right? Is to encourage our teachers to get that and like dive into bilingual ESL education. And not be like, oh, but I don't speak the language, so I can't do it. Yes, you can. You don't have to speak the language. And you might learn it along the way. And it's okay. You're not going to die. Then I thought about like at the high school level, I know we have the seal of biliteracy. Are we starting that at the elementary, right, in middle school? And is it following them? Like, what does that look like? Because it's changed so much from when my daughter was in middle school to now my son, who's going through it, and he's telling me all this cool stuff that they're doing. And I was like, oh, poor Sophie, she didn't have that. So that was just really cool to see how are we lined up, right, as we move our kiddos up. There are long questions about EL and dyslexia, so that's a topic for another day. Then I went to why your super can't tell you, or what your super can't tell you, but wish he could. I also put down like this would be a great module for a new board member or somebody who's coming on new, because for myself, like I sort of already knew, right? Dr. Meyer, so I never thought of that. I just like asked him stuff. But if you don't have that relationship with your super, right, how do you read between the lines? So I thought that was really good. Let's see, what was the other one? Oh, you're a board member, not your spouse, so keep confidentiality. I thought that was good too. I went to dual credit, scaling for impact. So again, that was the high school lens, but how do we get our kids prepared for that? And District 214, like, wow, 40 career pathways. I like took all these notes to take back and say, hey, what are we doing? You know, how are we getting our kids ready? And they talked a lot about partnering with the community. So they said our assets are there. Like we have so much out there. All we have to do is go partner with these businesses, right, to introduce them to our kids. I thought that was kind of cool. The AI in education was jam packed.
Yeah,
I think
it was hot there,
it was so hot. I think everybody expected something different than what we got. But what I did appreciate from him is policy is needed because these parents, there was a case that he talked about. Parents sued the school since it was not mentioned. There was no mention of AI. And so therefore it was like, well, you didn't say, right, common sense. You didn't say that my kid couldn't use it to write a paper. So is it really cheating? No, it's not. I did appreciate that he talked about advantages and disadvantages.
Yeah.
Because that gave me, right? Sometimes you guys see the other
I
side.
thought he could have gone into a little more depth.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Then he talked about like AI in school boards, AI in staff and parents. He did give like 6 steps as to where do we begin. So if that's something that we have to tackle, we can do that. Anything? That was it.
Nothing?
No.
Oh,
There you
time.
go.
Sorry. I apologize. Yeah, so if everybody can take a look at that link, there's that, Google Doc and at least link your own document to it. I don't expect you to retype it or just cut and paste it, whatever you want to do. That would be helpful. That way we all can have the information and go from there. Thank you for emailing.
So listening to what you were sharing about follow-up items that what I would want to work with my team on. And I'm sharing this with you so that if I miss something or you think I need to add something in, I'm asking you to please tell me. I know we're working on AI stuff now, so we certainly want to bring that back to you with what we're doing there. I'm almost positive too, press has addressed some of the AI early on when it first came out. So we do have something in policy already, but we want to confirm that. Christy, I'd want to hear back from you about the books that you selected.
I'm not suggesting everybody needs to read them, but let me go
Right.
through them and see them. And if nothing else, perhaps I can just share some of the insights. And again, I'm happy to let anyone borrow them once I finish them. I'm not looking for everyone to necessarily need them. Let me look through them first.
Yep.
I just wanted to share and put it in there in case anyone else is interested, by all means, like you can, but I'm also happy to loan them out. It's not like I'm.
Well, I bring it up because those 2 first topics, the AI, District 120 was bringing up similar questions. We're at the panel sessions also. The book reviews came up as well. So I mean, Aaron Wellington for District 120, he was going to review a couple of books also. So I think there may be some overlap potentially. So I think at some point, depending on what you and him think, maybe there's something there that the boards could do because both of them revolve around, you have a transition coming on the superintendent's role.
Yeah.
So
Well, that's what I said.
what
Let me
can
look
we
through
do
them
with
to
that?
see if one might be more helpful
Yes.
than another or whatever, and then we can go.
The other part I heard would want to look about, into a little bit more about the dual credit. So I'll definitely go through what you had, George, which I would be interested to see. next steps for what we would be looking at for more pathways in grade 6 through 8. And even, there's still some you can even go a little bit lower in the grade levels. I know I'm talking with 79, they're looking at some similar things too. So we want to try to coordinate that, but we'd like to get more info on that. And then talking about how we can always, Emily, what you were talking about the district story. I think one of the things that oftentimes can get overlooked is the elementary districts. And there's a great stories to be told with what's taking place in each of our buildings in our classroom. Making sure, how do we highlight that? And I know we do a good job of sharing a lot of stories, but I think we also need to make sure, how does everybody else knowing that as well? Yes, the podcast. You get special guests on. I like that, dude. So those were the things that I pulled from listening to you. We can at least follow up on, at least get more information. Is there anything else that you would like us to look into that I may have missed?
I was just saying from a tech perspective, maybe looking into that board email, that seems like that would be a very easy, just doing like a Board of Education email that would just then forward to each of us.
Yep.
To all of us, I should say. That should not be difficult. I would just think that may go into then on any community things that may go out there, that is one, rather than saying, reach out to the president or whatever, we can just,
Yes.
it can be out there. Not that we have to publish it, but it would be on the website, and if people wanted to, at least that's a way to do that. And then if we do future community things, it's a way to put it out there without having people have to go look up 7 email addresses.
We can look at that. I think it'd be a good time to establish if that's what you want. That's one of those topics that seems to ebb and flow depending on the board. So at one point we had that. And then the board decided to move away from it because they didn't want to receive an email that wasn't meant for them. And they're talking about like who's to respond then. So I think if we're at a point now where you feel you'd like to have that, so it's just all coming to you as a group and then filtering it back through one so that you know who's responding always. Certainly can do that. So I just need you to let me know if that's yay, you want to do that or no.
I guess I don't think we need to necessarily dictate that today. I guess the question would be, I don't think that would be that difficult, and maybe that's something for us to look into and talk about at a board governance or, yeah, maybe we'll come back to it. So
Okay.
I don't mean to make that decision for everyone here. We can talk about it at a.
We got the tech guy behind us.
Well.
I like the idea. I mean, it shows our commitment to hearing from the community and it makes it easier for them to do that.
And it doesn't mean we have to publicize it just yet. Just because we put it on the website doesn't mean it's not like we're putting it on all materials and we're gonna invite, none of us want to get 100 emails. I get that.
Yeah.
And that would be one of those like board agreements, perhaps. Clearly, nobody should, and it should say like, do not respond to all in the forwarding communication or something so that it's clear, like, just because you get this does not mean if this is coming from the forwarding, it's just for information only. And it still should be filtered through the chain of command and all of those things. So, for responses. But that's that's the idea of the board agreements is something I'd like to, have us talk about. But when we do a reflection closed meeting session, when we get to that at some point, and we've got lots of these closed meetings to do, but at some point, I know we try to do, annually or so. That may be something, maybe when we see the new board, is the time to maybe look into doing.
But you can even use the declaration.
Yeah.
Because there's some of the agreements there, or what you have in your policy already. You can look at some of it before even getting to that transition for board members.
Mm-hmm.
So you guys can kind of vet through that work. Okay. Can do. Thank you. Definitely appreciate you sharing. Last item in my report is regards to CEDAW. Eric, I know you were double booked. Were you by chance able to go to the meeting on December 4th?
No, I was here. They shared the slides from the meeting. So, I mean, I can share what I gathered just from those slides. There wasn't as much information on those slides about, well, it mentioned the formation of the tuition restructuring committee, but not necessarily, what's coming next. They did talk about tuition increases for next year, and then a lot of budget amendments that were Pretty,
substantial.
yeah.
Okay.
I can.
I
share
can
the
hit on a lot of
information.
that for you if you want, if you're going through it. So, we're coming back to you. We're gonna make the recommendation that at this time, that we would rescind our withdrawal notice from CEDAW. And here's why. What we're finding out now is we do have two interim superintendents in those roles. They've agreed to come on board again for a second year because what they're uncovering is going to take a little more time to be able to make some of these changes. And in their work, what they've done is been able to go to all the member districts, been able to get feedback, and they're seeing consistencies with what was in that audit that was provided roughly probably 2 years ago now. What the interim superintendents would like to be able to do is to see CEDAW take on the programming that they know is very unique and very difficult to be able to do on your own home district. Because typically the number of participants in those programmings, you just won't have enough students. So those would be examples like deaf and hard of hearing program, the LASSO 3 program that's over at the Fairhaven School for more medically fragile students, that those would be retained, and the others that could be handled by the homeschool districts would be in place. Now for us, because we do already have the majority of our kids back in our school district, that doesn't impact us quite as much. So that's the benefit of that. The other part that they're looking at, and Eric just hit on it, is we're looking at how the financial structure can be more equitable for the school districts, and that you're paying more for what the services are that your students are being able to be provided, which falls in line with really the philosophy that we have. What we're seeing is by the interims being in place, that movement is starting to take place. I think a couple of key factors are really helping propel it. A, they have a committee structure set up. You should hopefully feel confident that you've got myself on the steering committee for helping to lead some of the change. Kathy is on the finance committee. And then when they get a programming committee pulled together, Jamie's going to be on that one. So that's one key factor, I think, is we can monitor this more. We know we'll have an influence. And a lot of times they're using District 75 and 120 as models as to the way they would like to see the cooperative run, meaning we're taking care of the majority of our kids the way we should be. The other part that we're seeing take place is they've uncovered a number of financial calculations that needed to be corrected. What that means is they were not billing for what the accurate cost was for students to attend their programs. So they need to correct that. What that means for home districts, they're talking between a 15 up to 17% increase for next year. It may be over 1 or 2 years, but right now we need to plan on it being all in 1 year. Even with that happening, that still doesn't impact us as much because we don't have as many students. And we'd still be paying a rate that's very comparable or lower than what we would if we were not a member district going to like True North, which is another co-op, to have one of our students be able to get in. And we're not guaranteed a seat there right now. I mean, in the end, it's in our best interest to try to remain in CEDAW. And I think they've demonstrated as the interims through their communication and keeping people informed and uncovering what they are, that they're headed in the right direction. So that I think it's in the best interest for our District 75 to remain, while still before June comes around, I would come back to you and say I would recommend we put another withdrawal notice on file so that you're able to make the decision again 1 year from now, should you want to be able to withdraw. That gives you the flexibility to withdraw for July of 2026. The indicators that you'd want to use, if I'm in your seat, the first thing I would do, I would look at that audit report with what they said. More importantly, listen to what Jamie and Kathy are telling you. You should see the programming at CEDAW being really defined to what they can manage. That'd be one. Two, the funding should be more equitable across the school districts period. Those would be two key elements to be in place. The third one, to be able to make the transition and what they've talked about, CEDAW should be supporting all the districts, which would include us, as this transition would occur. They're talking right now, maybe a 3 to 5 year time period, because they would want to be able to provide professional development for staff on what it means for having students with different needs within the building and what it means to provide those supports. And that's a realistic plan to be able to put in place. So for those reasons, at this time, I'd recommend that the board does rescind the request to withdraw now with the knowledge that we would re-up that for June.
Can you remind us what the original timeline was with the resolution? I can't remember when we filed it and when we were gonna review it again.
So we had filed it, it was almost a year and a half ago. So we got it in and we requested them to hold off on moving forward until December. We asked for this time to see if there was progress. They agreed to that. So if we give them that notice now, they won't start in motion going through the withdrawal proceedings. So we're almost, I'd say roughly 14 months from when we first did this, approximately.
But we're within the timeline that's pursuant to the contract, because that was when the idea first came about, and the reason why it's been 14 months was essentially we found out we were past due the deadline to make that for that next year.
Correct.
So we sort of made it early for the next time period.
Yes.
But now you're saying your recommendation today is to go ahead and rescind the first notice with the knowledge that in a couple of months we'll do it again, just to keep the pressure on, not necessarily because you think we should at that point be withdrawing, but because we need to fulfill the contractual obligations to give notice in a timely manner.
Yes. So this withdrawal notice, Eric, if we wanted to keep moving forward in that direction, would mean we could withdraw from CEDAW potentially July of 25, this coming summer,
With the current one, right?
with the current one. Yep.
And they already gave us a timeline for when the tuition advisory committee will be making recommendations to the exec board, and then when the admin will then make recommendations. So we'll probably hear updates along the way before June.
But it sounds like if they're moving in a forward progress, which is really what we were hoping to accomplish by putting out the withdrawal notice, that if you think that that's happening in a positive manner with a little more time given, that they will achieve what we were hoping to have them achieve, or if they didn't, then we were planning to bring it back here and try to do it ourselves. But it sounds like that it may not need to happen that way. And if it's possible to have the pressure to still be applied as an incentive for them to keep improving,
Yes.
to me, it sounds like a positive thing rather than having us take on things we can't support or may not be able to seat students if we get them.
Correct.
And with you being on the steering committee, you'll be able to do this. This is in June before you retire, right? So you'll be able to give us, that's okay. Good.
To be able to come back.
Yeah, that's.
We want to have the replacement hopefully get on there as well. I think the other nice part, nice District 79 superintendent and District 73 superintendent is also on the steering committee. So I think that's very helpful.
Yeah, it said there's only a couple districts that aren't doing it. I was surprised.
Well,
You know why anybody would not want to participate in that? I mean,
so I think there's two things. You have a steering committee that is approximately 10 of us that are, whether it's a unit district, elementary only or high school only, that are
I was looking at a different thing.
driving it.
Yeah.
And then you have everybody involved. I think one of the things we've stressed is everything that's happened at CEDAW, we can point the finger at CEDAW, but we need to point a finger at ourselves too, because we're responsible for how CEDAW operates. That's why there's an executive board. That's why there's the director's board part to it, also where there's a board member. So we have to be more responsible ourselves with making sure we're asking good questions, whether it's the admin level or it's the board level, to hold them accountable as well. So I think it's establishing it's our co-op, right, for us to work collectively on it.
Do you anticipate that any of their financial challenges right now are gonna impact their executive search next year?
Could it? It depends on where it is. So I mean, talking with the interim CSBO, they believe that this, by getting this increase, that'll help cover the gap, but they're digging more into it. I guess what I'd say is to find a superintendent for a co-op, the year's pretty unique anyway. I think they'll find a quality candidate. And confirming, so it's been shorter than what I recollected. April of 2024 was when we approved the first notice of withdrawal. To get it in before this past June.
We started talking about it for preview, but we didn't actually do it.
Will we have to do that same thing though for the next one to get it in before June?
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
That's why we'll probably do it again in April.
okay.
But I appreciate the heads up now so that it's not coming back going, why did you tell us to withdraw if we're turning around? So it's being upfront and being forward thinking so that we can be prepared and understand why you come back in a couple months and likely say that, but I appreciate the heads up.
And both their interim soups know about it too, what we're doing tonight potentially, and that we would reestablish another one. They understand. Okay. All right, thanks, folks.
Okay, moving on to committee updates, board policy. I know we agreed not to do, because of all the stuff going on, not to do, the board policy review tonight, so we're not doing that. And obviously we've got the press plus stuff that the superintendent just mentioned, to go with. So I don't have any other update on the policy committee. Finance advisory.
There's no report. We had a meeting for November 6th, but we had a meeting here, so we canceled it till January.
Shared services.
Know that we have any updates since our last meeting. We talked about new timeline and process, and we met with BWP after that and shared that timeline and process with them, and we're back at it.
Okay. At this point, we thought it was a good time to formalize the discussion about the joint district office discussions that are starting to happen. I know we had mentioned that I personally thought it seemed right for the shared services committee, but I didn't want to overload either one of you with that topic. So I wanted to kind of open that up now. I know that District 120 did appoint 2 of their board members to this particular discussion group. It does not happen to be their shared services committee just because of circumstances, not because of any policy reason they decided to do that. So reiterating, is this something that the 2 of you would like to take on, that you guys would meet with Jennifer and Laura from 120, or do you want somebody else to be appointed to step up to take that on?
Yeah, I'm happy to do it unless someone is compelled.
Yeah, unless there's anybody that really wants to do it.
Well, so then I would just ask that you guys then reach out to Jennifer and Laura and discuss what you guys need, what you
When
guys
they want to meet.
collectively, when you want to meet in order to start those discussions. And I imagine you guys is that one of the things that we'll report back in January at a joint meeting?
Yeah, we could. Depends how far along. So I guess what I would offer.
At least just an update, that's all I know.
Forward you an email, and what we're going to do is we'll review a couple of options so that you know what they would be with some potential costs to it, and then engage in conversations.
Sure.
Would be okay?
Not just works, but this you
I would be, yeah.
some direction there. Thanks.
But the 2 members of our board would be the 2 of you, and then the 2 members of, so that would be the. Okay.
The other thing, just to clarify too, so we had tentatively set up December 17th with 120's board being here. So just they're not showing up.
Right.
Just wanna make sure. Okay.
Yeah.
I
Well,
don't see him
I
anywhere.
don't want to state the obvious, but.
Yeah. No,
No
no.
one said anything before.
Yeah, they had changed that, piece, so they're not going to be here tonight. And so you don't, you will, I don't need to notify Peter of that. You will take him on that, or do you need me to? Okay,
Yeah.
just so
Can you share again who, the,
Laura and Jennifer Hill and Laura Mellon.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, moving on, community outreach. I don't know if there's any
No
community
update right now.
or committee update on that. Moving on to the representative updates, STEAM Foundation. There's also no, we haven't had a meeting since the fundraiser and all the other meetings we've had, so I have no update there. I imagine we'll do that after the holidays and report back before we start doing pizza throwdown. CEDAL, I think we just talked about. Is there anything else you want to bring up other than what's been discussed?
Yeah.
Likewise, village liaison. Anything you'd like to share with us, Dave?
Just to mention, the village hall is closed December 24th and 25th. Be at noon on December 31st and all day on January 1st. Board meeting for the 23rd has been canceled. Sienna's Cottage is open until December 21st.
Only open till Saturday. Means nothing. There we go. All right, well, that concludes our representative updates. We request that if a board member would like an item to be removed, moving on to the consent agenda, if anyone would like any item to be removed and from the consent agenda or tabled for future discussion, now is the time to communicate that request. Okay. So at this point, I move that we accept the consent agenda as adopted, or as recommended, excuse me. Secretary, please call the roll.
Figure out,
Aye.
Kinsky. Aye. Aguirre.
Aye.
Pelletier, aye. Durin, absent. Carl.
Aye.
Rose.
Aye.
At this time, moving forward to the board action items. Lengthy one. I move that the Board of Education of Mundelein Elementary School District 75 accept the superintendent's recommendation to approve the proposal from Stuckey Construction Company in Waukegan in the amount of $7,006,981 for the stage addition work at Carl Sandburg Middle School. In addition, the Board of Education of Mundelein Elementary School District 75 hereby authorizes the superintendent or designee to approve and execute contracts on behalf of the board for services related to the project and to approve and execute any change orders. With respect to change orders that necessitate an increase in the cost of contracts by 10% or more, or which would change the time of completion by a total of 30 days or more, the board hereby authorizes the superintendent or designee to make written determinations required by the statutes that one, circumstances said to necessitate the change in performance were not reasonably foreseeable at the time the contract was signed, or two, the change is germane to the original contract as signed, or three, the change order is in the best interest of the district and is hereby and is authorized by law.
Second.
Secretary, please call the roll.
Figure out,
Aye.
Rose.
Aye.
Carl.
Aye.
Kinsky. Aye. Durin, absent. Pelletier, aye. Aguirre.
I move that the Board of Education of Mundelein Elementary School District 75 accept the superintendent's recommendation to approve press policy number 117 and school board policy number 830, second and final reading as presented.
Second.
Secretary, please call the roll.
Figure out,
Aye.
Carl.
Aye.
Aguirre.
Aye.
Pelletier, aye. Kinsky. Aye. Durin, absent. Rose.
Aye.
I move that the Board of Education of Mundelein Elementary School District 75 accept the superintendent's recommendation to rescind the resolution notice of withdrawal from the Special Education District of Lake County, CEDAL, as presented.
Second.
Secretary, please call the roll.
Fingerhut.
Aye.
Pelletier. Aye. Rose.
Aye.
Carl.
Aye.
Kidsky. Aye. Theron absent. Aguirre.
Aye.
So at this time, the Board of Education will now adjourn and enter into executive session at 8:30 PM for the purposes of the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees of the public body or legal counsel for the public body, including hearing testimony on a complaint lodged against an employee of the public body or against legal counsel for the public body to determine its validity according to statute, and for the discussion of minutes of meetings lawfully closed under the Open Meetings Act, whether for the purpose of approval by the body of the minutes or semi-annual review of the minutes as mandated by the statute. I need a second. Okay. Secretary, please call the roll.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, say no.
This one says it has to be a roll call. Does it need to be? Well, on my
Oh, it does.
agenda
Well, I'll roll.
guiding, just, I don't know. I'm looking at Anna, so.
I'll roll call it.
Okay. Aye.
Fingerhut.
Aye.
Good. Kidsky. Aye. Aguirre.
Aye.
Pelletier. Aye. Rose.
Aye.
Theron absent. Carl.
Aye.